So bear with me, everybody. I'm ultra remote right now. I'm actually getting my hands and feet a little bit in the mix. But just so you know as to what exactly I'm working towards, because there is a bit of a project that I am working on, I'm trying to basically work with local municipalities to expedite affordable home building. Or if they don't want to work with, then we're going to try to, I don't know if I can say this, but kind of strong arm them into doing it anyways because of the housing crisis, and we just can't trust the government to get stuff done. So here we are trying to get our feet in the mix, but more on that later. What we are going to be talking about in this video is Pierre Poilievre and his bright future ahead. So here we go. Today is a new day and there's new news, and it is actually confirmed that Pierre has his seat. We are moving forward with Pierre Poilievre as the leader of the Conservative Party, and I personally couldn't be happier about that. There are a lot of great MPs. However, I do think that Pierre is the best option right now. He's done a phenomenal job of gathering people and having this, sense of hope that he brings to the table. Right? He has his way that motivates people for change while simultaneously uniting people, and that's what we really need right now. This is my leader, and I'm very much looking forward to the upcoming election or by-election turnout for his new riding. Also, massive shout out to the incredible gentleman who gave up his seat. He was 6 months away from getting his pension. I don't know if you guys actually knew that or not.
Pierre Poilievre has found a safe place to regain his seat in the House of Commons. The Conservative leader was turfed by voters in an Ottawa area riding on Monday night. Now an MP is stepping aside in the Alberta riding of Battle River Crowfoot to let Poilievre run. Tyler Barrow has the story from Drumheller.
Something big is up in Drumheller. Normally best known for its dinosaurs, Pierre Poilievre might soon be the rural community's MP in Ottawa.
Having a leader of a party representing us is almost like a dream come true.
Poilievre lost the Ottawa area riding he held for more than 20 years by 4,300 votes. Liberal Bruce Vanjoy suddenly became a giant killer, leaving the federal Conservatives without a leader in the House of Commons and Poilievre's future up in the air. On Friday, the Conservative MP who has represented Drumheller in Battle River Crowfoot since 2019 and won again in a landslide Monday resigned his seat.
I'm proud to represent and stand with and for the people of Battle River Crowfoot.
In a statement, Currick said it was best for Canada. Poilievre took to X, saying he accepts the offer with humility and appreciation. The riding includes a huge section of east central Alberta, and it's solidly blue. Currick took nearly 82% of the vote. Drumheller residents seem largely excited by the chance to call Poilievre their own.
I think it's actually a beautiful blessing for us.
You don't get better than the official opposition in your riding.
But not everyone agrees.
He lost his seat. Why does he need to run here?
Alberta Premier Daniel Smith loves the idea, calling it a beautiful homecoming moment. Poilievre is originally from Calgary, but one political watcher isn't convinced.
A bit odd to have somebody who's sort of just representing so they can have a seat, so they can have a place in Parliament and not really be connected to the folks that he's supposed to be representing.
At his first press conference since the election, Prime Minister Mark Carney says he'll stay out of the way of any by-election.
We'll ensure that it happens as soon as possible.
Okay.
No games, nothing, straight.
And Tyler joins us from the Badlands. So Tyler, when is this by-election expected to take place?
Ian, there is a process. Even if the resignation took effect today and a by-election was called immediately, it would still be about 6 weeks before voting day. The House of Commons would be done sitting and off for the summer, so the earliest Canadians would see Poilievre in the House of Commons would be by the fall. Now, of note, we did reach out to all candidates who ran in the Battle River Crowfoot riding. Only the People's Party of Canada candidate got back, who does plan on running in the by-election.
So, things that are set in stone. Pierre has his seat. Obviously, this is incredible. But what does this mean for Alberta? I mean, Alberta's going through a massive separatist movement right now, as are other provinces. But specifically focusing on the northern Texas, what's this going to mean? Well, CBC brought on an analyst who has a few words to say about it.
This riding that Pierre Poilievre not has chosen, but is now going to, the elected MP is going to step down. This is a pretty sure bet, it seems. Are you surprised that they would have gone for this particular riding?
I'm not surprised at all, Sarah, and thank you for having me. This Battle River Crowfoot riding is about as close to a sure thing as you get in conservative politics across the country. The incumbent Damien Carrick, a two-term member of Parliament and a popular one, albeit a backbencher, won with 82% of the vote just a number of days ago. Of course, he'll step aside to make way for the Conservative leader, and you have to assume that after realizing on Monday night, and maybe before that sure things sometimes aren't sure things, Team Poilievre, that figured, based on polling over the past 18 months or so, that they would be forming Canada's next government, weren't taking any risks when they were looking at the ridings that they would consider. Now, rumor has it here in the province of Alberta that MP-elect Carrick wasn't the only one to step forward and volunteer his riding for the good of the party, for the good of the party leader. But even in conservative Alberta, some of the other ridings rumored to be in play, including Edmonton-Griesbach, that'd be Kerry Diot, were perceived, no doubt, to be far too risky for Pierre Poilievre to put it out there. If progressives combined forces, imagine him losing a by-election 2 in a row within a week, or whenever this one goes down, that'd be it for the Conservative leader.
You know, ever since the Liberals did win this election, there's been this talk of separation coming out of Alberta. It occurs to us in our discussions earlier today that Poilievre making this Alberta home riding, in Calgary in particular, might that diffuse the sentiment in any way, having an opposition leader federally from Alberta?
Well, I mean, keep in mind that the Prime Minister is born and raised in Edmonton, although I'm not sure that the majority of Albertans feel like Mark Carney truly is an Albertan. He didn't seek a seat in Alberta. Of course, his professional career has been largely outside the province of Alberta. But Alberta's no stranger to the home of federal political leaders. Preston Manning, obviously Stephen Harper, Stockwell Day. Alberta has produced a lot of conservative politicians. So having Mr. Poilievre represent that riding of Battle River Crowfoot, perhaps a sense of pride for those constituents there. I think it's probably obvious and pretty important to point out that they're not going to be seeing a whole lot of their member of parliament. You have to assume, as Poilievre's duties will keep him largely in Ottawa or traveling across the country. As for this separatist sentiment, yeah, it's flaring up, and Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith probably is playing a pretty decent role in that with her Bill 54, making it a whole lot easier for Alberta voters to trigger a referendum. The coincidence there, the timing, no chance that's coincidental. But at the end of the day, is this separation sentiment to be taken seriously? If the polls are correct, 2.5, maybe 3 out of every 10 Albertans feel strongly this way, I figure it's time to give the separatists what they want. Let's have that referendum this fall, and let's settle this once and for all.
I'll just point out Mark Carney, because he is a stickler for this. He was born in the Northwest Territories, but you're right. He does often talk. Yes. He talks about Alberta being his home. And of course, you know, Poilievre has certainly roots in Alberta. I'm just struck by, I remember when Stephen Harper won and what a big deal it was in Alberta and in Western Canada that a prime minister was coming from Western Canada. It is something that we don't see very often. And in the fact that Pierre Poilievre is the leader of the opposition, does it give the West potentially more of a voice?
Well, I mean, you remember what the refrain, right, through the late 1980s all the way into the 2000s, and that was that the West wants in. And the sentiment out here, I know I don't have to tell your audience, is that federal elections are typically decided by the time that polls close in Manitoba. And prairie voters don't feel like they have a say. They don't feel like they're taken seriously. You have to assume that Pierre Poilievre, when he wins the Battle River Crowfoot by-election, will throw some sort of a bone to that riding. But if you look back at the track record of conservative governments in Alberta, or rather conservative governments federally speaking, they've not had demonstrable different results for Alberta either way. It's not as though conservative prime ministers like Stephen Harper have bent over backwards to reward Alberta voters. And so I'm not sure the average person would be preparing to be treated any differently this time around, if we're being honest.
Again, if I'm being totally honest, I kind of disagree with this schmuck. I think it's undeniable that Alberta has the Conservative stronghold in Canada. So having Pierre, our leader in that province, is going to elevate the grassroots movement. There are so many people who are ready and willing to start helping Pierre win in the next election and make the shift from this country from being liberal to conservative. And being in Alberta, the quote-unquote mecca of conservatism, I can say that that's only going to open more networking opportunities and a massive morale boost for the party and its supporters. And it also makes total sense. It's kind of hard being a conservative when you're surrounded by a bunch of elbows up people, right? Not saying that Pierre doesn't have support in Ottawa, but I do think that it is time to make the move to Alberta. I also think that failure is how we learn. Not that we failed, but we did lose. And there are going to be some rebranding done for the Conservatives in the near future, would be my guess. I'm unsure of what that's actually going to look like, but I think that it's obvious that something needs to be done to convince the chicken dancers that conservatism is the way to go. Now, if I am just speaking off the top of my head, maybe he just gets a security clearance. Why not? I mean, leave the colorful commentary to the commentators, right? That was Pierre's whole thing. He doesn't want to be gagged because then it has to silence him, but it doesn't silence me, it doesn't silence the plow, it doesn't silence Northern Perspective or Moose on the Loose. That's kind of where we come in. So if he gets that done, it shuts the libs up, and bang, off to the races we go. Now, I know that might be unpopular to say because he doesn't actually need to get it, but if you think of all the people that voted against Pierre because he didn't have it, I mean, that could swing at least a couple 100,000 people to support Pierre in the near future, which again would be absolutely incredible. Pierre, people do want to help you, and if you want to talk smack about liberal corruption, let us YouTubers do that, man. We got your back. If that wasn't obvious before, it should be by now. Let me know what you guys think about that idea, or if you have any suggestions for Pierre, leave a comment down below. I'm pretty sure his team is going to see it. Next up, we're going to take a look at the bald guy from CBC who gets absolutely destroyed and kind of has a bit of a meltdown while debating Andrew Scheer. This is hilarious. I think you're going to love this. Let's take a look.
I want to start with the status of your leader. I mean, Pierre Poilievre started this year with a 20-point lead in the polls, but he lost the election and he lost his seat. So why should he stay as party leader?
Well, when you look at it, the polls going into the election had him in around high 30s, and we got 42%. We've got a record number of votes in the history of our party, and including the highest percentage of the vote in the modern Conservative era. So in addition to gaining seats in places where we've never held them before, like Welland, we've got a large number of new MPs, and we've got a large number of new voters. People who have never voted Conservative before or who have never voted see themselves in our party thanks to Pierre's leadership and thanks to the fact that he's been speaking to their issues. All the terrible policies of the Liberal government that drove up housing costs, that caused crime waves and drugs to flood our streets and kill jobs and cause inflation. Pierre has been speaking about those issues, addressing them, offering solutions. And so this incredible result, while disappointing that we didn't win, is just a fantastic base to build on for the next election.
But, you know, in 2019, you won the popular vote. You increased your seats. You held the Liberals to fewer seats, and you won your own seat. And that wasn't good enough for you to stay around. So why is the standard different in 2025?
Well, my decision was because of the strain that it had put on my family, given the number of children I have and the ages that they were. I will just happily point out that Pierre got 8 or 9 points more than I did in 2019 and a large number of new seats. So, look, I mean, Pierre is the leader of our party. He's the leader of our movement. When I went door knocking, and I did in many different provinces across the country, from Vancouver Island all the way to New Brunswick, I would knock on doors and I would get people tell me not only did they never vote Conservative in past elections, but often that they never voted at all because they didn't think that the parties in Ottawa were representing them. Right. They came out and they voted for us. We've got blue-collar unionized workers saying, you know, the other parties have killed projects and made it so there's not enough work to go around, or they've devalued paychecks with inflation, and the Conservative Party was the one that was talking about building things in this country again and fighting inflation. So I think you'll find in the next days and weeks that the Conservative caucus is united. there's a tremendous amount of support for Pierre, and we're very grateful to Damien Kirk and the people of Battle River Crowfoot, because Pierre's going to be back in the House in no time, leading the fight to hold this government to account.
But, you know, if the message was resonating with Canadians as strongly as you suggest, and certainly it was in certain places, how do you explain what happened in Carleton? I mean, voter turnout surged, and a national leader, a frontrunner to be prime minister, voted out by the constituencies represented for 20 years.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just surging votes for the Conservatives in certain places. It was practically all across the country. I mean, we got over 1 million votes in Quebec for the first time in the modern Conservative era.
But 80% voted in Carleton, and more than 50% of them voted for Bruce Fanjoy to defeat Mr. Poilievre. How do you explain that, sir?
Still an incredibly, still an increase in support for Pierre in terms of number of votes. Look, it's about 4 or 5 days after the election. It's Friday. My own results only got finished counting this morning. There's still data trickling in. We're going to take the time, as any party should, after an election in which they fail to achieve the goal of winning and forming government, look at what happened. But let's not lose sight of the fact that if you had told Conservative MPs and Conservative activists a year or two ago that our leader and our campaign team would get 42% of the vote, we would all say, sign us up. That's incredible. Obviously, something has happened. The complete and utter collapse of the NDP might be a new normal in Canada. You know, a lot of people are talking about the Conservative campaign. We should also include in that conversation how a party like the NDP, take Saskatchewan, for example, the birthplace of the movement, the CCF and the NDP, they went down to 7.5% in my riding, in the province. So, you know, this might be the new normal. This might mean that we need to rethink how we communicate on things and think about how we campaign. If the NDP had have gotten similar to their average over the last 5 or 6 elections, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So, you know, we have to fight elections on the train that we find them, and this may very well be something that is permanent going forward. But I think it's too early to kind of jump to conclusions about what aspect of the campaign right now needs to be addressed. We need to take our time and do that in a thorough and thoughtful way.
Well, big chunks of NDP vote in places like southwestern Ontario appears to have gone Conservative as well. So it's not entirely to the benefit of the Liberals, but the Liberals have now, they've just won their 4th election in a row, and they've had their highest vote share since 1980, I believe. So the way you're describing the data, it's almost like you feel like this is still a bit of a victory for the Conservatives when clearly it's a victory for the Liberals.
Well, first of all, to your point about the NDP, you are right. In places where the NDP vote came our way, we won the seats. We won seats in Windsor. I mean, when you look at the kind of ground zero, the front lines of workers who would be affected by U.S. tariffs, we won seats in the auto sector regions in Windsor. We won in Kitchener. We won in Hamilton, where they make steel. Here in Regina, where they make steel, where we make steel. Places where forestry jobs could be affected. Conservatives won farming and agriculture, mining. So in other places where those NDP votes went Liberal, obviously there were different results, but you know, no one's pretending that this is that we won the election. I mean, we are going to approach caucus and our party and our movement with the realization that we cannot do the exact same thing next time as we did this time. No one's suggesting that we're just going to copy and paste into the next election. But that being said, we need to focus on the gains that we've made. Our voter coalition now is much bigger and much more diverse, and has people who had never seen themselves in the Conservative Party. So we need to make sure that we keep them there, keep talking about the issues that affected them, you know, keep talking about housing, keep talking about crime and fighting inflation. I'm confident that if we do that, we will be able to build and get that final 3, 4, 5% that we need to put us over the top.
Right. Well, you talked about when you were knocking on doors, people, you know, responding to the message and saying that you were the only party talking about the issues that were important to them. But we've had a number of Conservative MPs and a number of Conservative candidates say that when they were knocking on doors, they were being told by older voters, by women voters in particular, they didn't like your leader, they didn't like his tone, they didn't like his style. And in the final weeks of the campaign, Mr. Poilievre, after being so central to everything this party has done for 2 years, disappeared from your ads. So at the end of it, was it Mr. Poilievre who was a drag on the campaign and was a challenge for you? Because some of your own candidates are suggesting that he was.
Well, you know, I just invite them to look at the facts that he took our party from 33%-ish to over 40. So, you know, that's an incredible gain, and that is directly linked to his inspirational leadership, his ability to communicate, the way that he led a team of capable, parliamentarians. So there's just an incredible amount of reason to be optimistic. And I've knocked on doors. I've gone campaigning since 1999, 1997 even. When I was first would have been about 18 years old. I have always encountered voters who never vote Conservative. I've always heard from Liberals and NDP and people who've already decided to vote for other parties that they don't like our party, they don't like our leader. What we have to find out is, we don't need to listen to the people who are never going to vote Conservative. We need to talk to the people who are open to voting for us, who might have not in the last few days. But again, I think we also have to put this in context. What the Liberal Party did by dumping a sitting Prime Minister, suspending Parliament, having a rush leadership race with a new leader without really the time for Canadians to get to know, all under the threat of a U.S. tariffs that dominated the news cycle. These are conditions that the Liberals should not count on happening again. Whereas our new voters are voting for us because of policies, because they see in our party a solution to the cost of living crisis, to the fact that their communities aren't as safe, the fact that they can't afford to own a home or move out of their parents' basement. So I'm incredibly optimistic about our ability to build off of our gains this time, and I'm optimistic that we'll be able to finish the job in the next election.
Right, but your party may not be able to rely on post-COVID inflation crisis that was fueled by war in the breadbasket of Europe and supply.
David, you know this. You know that inflation is caused when governments print money.
Well,
that's what the Liberals did. The Liberals flooded the economy with brand new cash. It has nothing to do.
They spent money. They didn't print money. The Bank of Canada did not increase the number of banknotes in circulation in the economy. They use settlement balances.
David,
they use settlement balances to buy government bonds to put liquidity. I'm not being dishonest.
They created money out of thin air. They massively expanded the money supply. You know this.
They did not permanently increase the money supply, Mr. Scheer. But anyway, I don't want to have an argument on monetary policy. They use settlement balances to buy bonds, to lower interest rates, to put liquidity into the banking system, and then they remove those settlement balances over time. So,
are you denying that there is more currency, whether it's digital or real, in the Canadian economy today? Are you denying?
I'm saying they use settlement balances, and you're calling it money for. There may be a small marginal increase, but it is not the. Anyway, everybody had. Anyway, all right.
Yeah.
Here we go. But I want to ask about, we just disagreed on something here. There were obviously disagreements between your campaign and Jenny Byrne, Premier Houston and his team, Premier Ford and his team. And throughout the course of the campaign, the fractures between the federal Conservatives and various provincial Conservative governments, progressive Conservative governments, went public to the point that Tim Houston kind of unprompted confirmed reporting about, Ms. Byrne making not physical threats, but political threats to people in his office. Is that a winning strategy for your party? Is this the sort of way the operations are going to continue?
Well, look, I'm not going to speak to things that I have no idea if they're true or not. I know that Jenny ran a fantastic campaign. She's an incredible movement conservative who has sacrificed so much for this party and laid it all on the line and got us 42% of the vote and massive increase in our seat across the country. So, I don't think Canadians want to hear too much from political premiers who might not have had a phone call returned. I think they want to hear from federal leaders, federal Conservative MPs and our leader speaking about how we're going to hold this Liberal government to account, push it to enact policies that protect the value of their paycheck, crack down on crime, address the housing issue, the housing cost issue, and that's what we're going to be focused on.
Right, but having an effective First Minister's table, having a good working relationship with provincial leaders and premiers, that's an important part, right? If you want to get that 3 to 4%, to get you over the top, don't you need to demonstrate that you can at least work with governments of more or less the same political stripe?
I think you'll see that Pierre Poilievre has been able to bring so many people together in this conservative movement, both in caucus, in terms of our membership, and obviously our voter coalition. I'm very confident that after the next election, when we are successful, that he'll be able to bring premiers together from all political stripes, from west to east, and he's demonstrated that. He's demonstrated his ability to be that unifier and be that person who can pull people together to find that common ground within our own movement. Brought us to 42%. Other other leaders at the time have tried to get new votes by burning other voters and by turning their back on the Conservative movement in one issue or another. Pierre hasn't done that. He's grown the party without losing voters, and we've added seats without without breaking faith with our core Conservative values, and that's the type of leadership that he brings to the table, and I'm confident that after the next election, other premiers will be the premiers will be able to see that as well.
So, Mr. Scheer, what can we expect to see? I mean, you were the House Leader in the last Parliament for the opposition. What can we expect to see when Parliament comes back later this month? Because things were not functioning well last time, and there was a report in the Toronto Star last month about an internal Conservative strategy document to make committees a torture chamber for government, to use parliamentary functions basically to generate clips for social media and stall the government agenda at every sort of opportunity. Is it going to be more of that when Parliament comes back, or given the threat of Trump looming over everything, is there going to be a real attempt for everyone to cooperate?
Well, I completely reject the characterization of that. Conservatives use committees to litigate and prosecute Liberal corruption, Liberal waste, and Liberal mismanagement. And the tone of Parliament is really set by the government. You saw the Liberal government in the last Parliament grind the business of the House to a halt rather than hand over documents for a scandal, for a corruption scandal that sent millions of dollars to Liberal friends. So it'll really be up to Mark Carney, and he can determine how Parliament functions based on how honest he is, how respectful of Parliament he is. But it's absolutely appropriate for Conservatives to get the message out when the traditional media doesn't cover the gross corruption and mismanagement at the committee level. Of course, it's appropriate for us to highlight that and make sure Canadians are aware of what's going on.
But when we go back on the 26th, after the King is done, given the speech, I mean, we're going to go back to privilege questions that stop government bills from going forward. I mean, Mr. Carney showed some grace today to Mr. Poilievre, saying, I will call your by-election at the earliest opportunity, which is a shift in things. I mean, so does that get reciprocated in how Parliament works, or are we back on sort of the same issue set that was there before proroguing?
Well, in order to have a question of privilege, the government has had to have breached privilege. And when we use the word privilege, I hope your viewers understand, we're not talking about the things that MPs use about their daily business for their own creature comforts. We're talking about the right of Parliament to get information for Canadians, to find out where the money is going, where it's being wasted. When a government ignores the right of Parliament to be that voice of taxpayers and to be transparent and be held accountable, when they breach those privileges, that's when there are questions of privilege. So there won't be any questions of privilege on the first couple of days. If Mark Carney and his cabinet don't breach those privileges, then there won't be questions of privilege going forward in the future. But if they do, then it's our job to hold them to account.
Okay, so look, the next step for your party is Mr. Poilievre will have to run in this by-election, and presumably, if you lose that one, Mr. Scheer, there's going to be a problem. I don't think you're going to lose that particular riding. But you've got to settle on an interim leader and who's going to lead in the Parliament until Mr. Poilievre returns. Who do you think that is going to be? Do you want to do that? And how quickly will we know for sure?
Well, it's great news that whatever whoever it is, it will be a very short term, because it looks like Pierre will be back in the House in no time at all. So what we're looking at is a parliamentary leader to perform the functions that require a member of Parliament to do. But we still have a party leader. It's Pierre Poilievre. The caucus is behind him. The movement is behind him. We're going to let our caucus come together. We've got a meeting scheduled now for Tuesday. So our new MPs, our returning MPs will get together. We'll have these discussions. We'll make a decision as a team. And out of respect for that process, I'm not going to speculate as to what might come out of that.
Do you think you'll pick that leader, the interim leader, on Tuesday, or could it be a little bit longer? I don't know if you know yet.
You have a job to do. I understand you have to ask these questions, but I respect our caucus process so much. I don't even want to go tiptoe down the road at all. We're just going to let that first meeting take place. We're going to have those discussions as a team, and we'll see what happens from that.
Okay. Will you offer your name as a candidate for that?
I'm not even going to step one toe.
It's a news program. Make some news.
I know. Sorry.
All right. Well, Andrew Scheer, it's been a long time. It's good to talk to you again, and thank you for coming on the show, and we hope you will come back. That's Conservative.
Yeah, go check that Bank of Canada statement on the amount of currency in the economy, David. You'll see I'm right.
I will, and you Google settlement balances, and then we can have another conversation. All right?
If it exists, it's in the economy.
All right. Yeah, but it can be removed. Anyway, that's another story. Andrew Scheer, good to talk to you, sir. Thank you for being here.
I gotta say, Andrew Scheer is hilarious. He is the biggest political troll that I have ever seen. My favorite moment was actually in the House of Commons from Andrew Scheer. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were voting on something and they knew they weren't going to get the Liberal NDP support. So what Andrew Scheer did is he actually voted against it and then afterwards played dumb and said, I didn't know, whoops, I made a mistake with my vote. And then he changed his vote to be in favor of the Conservatives. I might not be delivering it properly, but it was more of a you had to be there kind of thing to see how funny it was. But for those that do remember, shout out to you. So folks, that wraps up today's video. I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about Andrew Scheer's interview or about any of the topics that were covered. And on your way out, if you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's try and get to 500,000 subscribers, man. We have to try to band together to help Pierre now more than ever, and any help is appreciated. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.